Coltrane's relationship with the audience is kind of interesting. In 1961, he told Ralph Gleason, and it actually was a recorded interview that I've heard, but it's been published in print. He said, "I'm always looking for another My Favorite Things." And you can hear Ralph Gleason say, "Oh my God, I never thought you were, that kind of a person or whatever." But Coltrane, My Favorite Things was a money maker for him. That it was that tune that got him the offer to go to Impulse Records, who paid him more money than Atlantic could provide. So at that point, he was very much, you could say, in line with what his audience wanted and what he wanted to do. But by 1965, he definitely was moving away from what a lot of audience members could relate to. And there are a lot of stories about starting with a full house and ending with half the people there. Or there's a terrible story, but supported by 4 or 5 witnesses that I've spoken to, in Newark, New Jersey, where the club owner actually said, "You're fired," maybe not in those words, but something like, "If you won't play your old hits, we can't continue." You said it a little more nicely, but not so nice, which is unthinkable for someone who at that time was world famous, had won every award possible. So towards the end, he did say in at least one interview, maybe more than one, something to the effect of, "I just have to do at this point what I need to do. I know I'll be thinking about what do people want to hear." My experience in terms of talking with people about Coltrane's later music is that it's almost a separate audience. I mean, there are people like me that love everything Coltrane ever did. But most of the time when I talk to people, they go, "I love Coltrane up to and including A Love Supreme, but after that, I can't handle it." Or there is a contingent, and a substantial contingent, that says, "My favorite Coltrane is from Ascension on." And that's the stuff that they enjoy, and they get it. They get it that Coltrane's concept with all this screeching, or whatever you want to call it, wasn't "I'm angry." It was ecstasy. The concept was, this is a kind of religious ecstasy, and they get that. So it's interesting that there are these 2 separate audiences. I think that group of people that specifically react positively to Coltrane's music from, let's say, Ascension onward, may be a bigger group now than it's ever been. But it's a special group. I mean, they really prefer that to hearing Coltrane the Bird or something like that. That's really what they want to hear. Also want to mention something that few people realize. Coltrane passed away with a lot of tunes untitled. In fact, this is a kind of a little secret of the jazz field, is that a lot of musicians have a hard time naming their pieces. That includes myself. And even when they go into the studio, a lot of pieces they leave the studio and the engineer will say, "What should I write?" "I don't know, just call it tune number 1. I don't know." So Stellar Regions, for example, everything on that album was left untitled, and Alice came up with names. And she didn't realize that Stellar Regions itself had a name, Venus, which I think was Coltrane's name. But she didn't know it, she didn't recognize it, or as the late Michael Koskunis said to me, she wasn't on that date. In other words, Venus is just Coltrane of Rashid Ali. She hadn't made that recording, so maybe she wasn't that familiar with the tune. So one thing that's interesting for people to know is they're constantly asking me, why did Coltrane name this such and such, or name that such? It's not always Coltrane, so you have to look into it to see which ones are named by Coltrane. For people who don't immediately have a positive reaction to Coltrane's later music, I always feel that part of the problem there is the density of his quintet. when he's playing and Farrow is playing and Alice is playing piano and you have the bass and the drum, that's a lot for people to absorb. So what I suggest to people is the fewer musicians, the better for you. That's why Interstellar Space, which is just duets with Rashid Ali, who plays beautifully on them, by the way, he was sadly, I think, not appreciated enough because so many people are saying, oh, I wish Elvin Jones was still there. Rashid plays beautifully. And just the sax and the drum, I think, makes that music more accessible to a lot of people. Probably the music on Stellar Regions as well, because even though most of that music is a quartet, I would say do that next, because then you're adding a few instruments, but there's not two saxophonists, which is going to make it kind of dense and will feel more confusing for people. One thing about Coltrane in his later years, he said more than once, I have to do what I'm doing. I don't have a choice. And that's kind of important, because do you have to think about the audience? Absolutely. Can you possibly be a performing artist or even a public artist, let's say a visual artist, and not have some awareness of how the work is perceived by the public? No, it's impossible. But to some extent, your inner need has to come first. You have to be doing stuff that you believe in. You know, you can't do something, I always say doing anything on commission is tough if it wasn't your idea, but some commissioning you to do it, you know, can you really feel it? Can you really get into it as deeply as something where it's your own idea? So I think that Coltrane, part of the many ways that he inspired people is that he's someone who said, this is my inner drive is telling me I have to do this. And hopefully somebody will love it. It's not going to be for everybody. You know, it's interesting because not everybody develops the way Coltrane did, or Duke Ellington, or other artists who change a lot during their careers. You know, even just as people, you know, a lot of people kind of get to what they're going to be as an adult, and then that's it. I don't know that necessarily that means one person is better than the other. Certainly that's not what it means. But not everybody is like Coltrane, you know. Even our friend Jimmy Heath, who we loved, once he kind of got his style together, let's say by the late 1950s, that was his style. That was the Jimmy Heath style. And Jimmy Heath was a marvelous artist. It's not any way to look down on Jimmy Heath, but it is to say that Coltrane was different that way. He was somebody who was constantly moving on. And so I don't always necessarily think if somebody doesn't change that it's necessarily that they had a choice and decided not to go there. It may be that that's who they are.